Let's begin with today's topic. And it's inspired from an incident which occurred in the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. What happened was that once some companions of the Prophet used objectionable language against the gods of those Makkans who were opposed to the Prophet's message. So these Makkans became angry and they started reacting to the objectionable language used by Muslims for their gods. And when Muslims faced this situation, the Quran sent a very important piece of advice. And this advice has been mentioned in chapter 6 of the Quran, Surah Al-An'am. Here God says to Muslims, do not abuse those beings whom they invoke instead of God, lest they in their hostility abuse God out of ignorance. So this is verse number 108 of chapter 6 of the Quran. And this verse is extremely important. If we reflect on it, we will understand that here the Quran is not telling Muslims to command others to not abuse God and the Prophet. Instead, the Quran is advising Muslims to refrain from using abusive language against the gods and the idols of other people. So, the Quran means that if you use derogatory language against those beings whom other people consider sacred, then they will get provoked, and naturally, as a result of their provocation, they would abuse God and the Prophet. So here we have a very important principle outlined in this particular verse of the Quran. And we understand that this principle was not meant only for the 7th century Arabia. Rather, it is an eternal principle which is applicable to human relations. And what is that principle? Apparently, this verse of the Quran says, if you abuse the gods of others, they will get provoked and they will abuse you and your gods. So don't abuse people. So this is what the Quranic verse apparently means. But there is a profound principle hidden in this verse. And what is that principle? What is that piece of wisdom? It is that you should not let enmity or hostility develop between you and other people. If any such hostile situation seems to potentially arise between you and others, then nip that situation in the bud. Don't allow that situation to escalate and create an atmosphere of hatred, negativity, bitterness, and even violence. So don't create enemies. Don't make enemies. If you behave in a wrong way, if you provoke others, if you behave in an unpleasant way with them, then they would naturally develop bitterness for you. They will develop hatred and anger for you. So don't behave in this way. Take the responsibility upon yourself. Take the onus on yourself. Be extremely far-sighted. Don't allow any controversy or any dispute to arise at all between you and other people. So here this is a very important guiding principle for leading life in the family, in society, and in the world at large. And we have to bear this in mind that if we make enemies, if our behavior, if our attitude creates enemies, makes people angry with us, then we will have to bear immense consequences. We will have to face the repercussions. And what will be that consequence? That person will become negative for us, and he will start working and planning against us and create obstacles and hurdles for us. So always take the responsibility on your own self. Don't take any excuse to create an explosive situation between you and another person. Because what we people generally do is that we behave wrongly. Often our attitude is incorrect, our conduct or dealing with people is wrong, and that leads to the other person becoming negative for us. And then we develop complaints against that person. We begin to describe in vivid detail all the complaints that we have against him, all the wrongdoing that he has done to us, all the problems that he has created for us. We start engaging in a blame game. We start laying all the blame at the other person's door. But the Quran is advising us to seek the cause within, to blame yourself. Try to identify where you were mistaken, which caused the other person to become angry, become an enemy, and engage in all kinds of unpleasant activities against you. So always remember that you have to be very cautious in the kind of behavior that you have, in the way that you are dealing with people. And if we think about this particular verse of the Quran, it gives us a very important solution to a deep problem which afflicts human society even to this day. And that problem is the problem of conflict. And the Quran tells us very succinctly and very comprehensively that the way of dealing with conflict, the way of resolving conflicts, or what is today called conflict resolution, can be done by following a one-point formula. And that formula is avoid provocation. Don't provoke others. Because when you provoke a person, what happens is that he inevitably retaliates. He will retaliate to your provocation. He will not remain sitting silently. So don't make yourself a subject of other people's retaliation. Don't behave in such a way that people hit back at you. Maintain your calm and composure. Be patient. Control your behavior. This is the way we have to lead life in this world, to avoid conflicts, to minimize all kinds of disputes that arise between people. And there is a very important hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him. He said that a believer should never humiliate himself. And the companions asked the Prophet, how does a believer humiliate his own self? How is that possible? And the Prophet replied, a person humiliates himself by confronting with a power which he does not have the strength to encounter. If you provoke somebody who is stronger than you, what will happen? He will use all his strength, all his capacity, all his resources to counter you, to suppress you and repress you. So don't start that initial provocation. Don't give the other person a chance to behave in such a way that you become subject of his or subject to his negative activities. So we have to keep this very important principle in mind. If we bear this in mind, a lot of problems of human society will come to an end. And the Prophet and the Quran tell us that a believer is a person who sees with the light of God. He sees with divine insight. It means that a believer is a person who does not immediately react to anything that comes before him. He is a person who has great vision, great far-sightedness. He knows that if he behaves in the wrong way, if he develops enmity with people, if he makes enemies out of people, then this behavior will in the long run affect him in a great way. People will stop him from doing his work. People will create enormous trouble for him, and he will be the one who suffers a lot of losses. So the principle that we have to follow in life is don't create a situation of enmity. Maintain your patience, maintain your higher principles, and that will be very important in preserving your time and energy. You will be able to single-focusedly work on the purpose that you have chosen for yourself. And it would also prevent you from coming under attack by others, prevent people from becoming negative for you. So this is a very wise manner of living in this world. And this simply can be stated as don't let people become enemies of you. And once you make people enemies and they behave badly, then be ready to face the consequences. Don't go about complaining. Don't go about saying that you have been dealt with unjustly, that there is no justice. So this is a very important advice that the Quran gives us, and that is you have to seek the cause within. You have to look inward. You have to try to find where is it that you made a mistake? Where is it that you were at fault, which is causing you to suffer what you are suffering? And the Quran clearly states that whatever a person experiences in life, whatever a person goes through in life, is a result of his own actions. It's a result of what his own hands have wrought. So the Quran wants a person, a believer, to become a very responsible person. He should try to become extremely careful and cautious in leading life in society. He must not try to be someone who goes about trying to determine other people's mistakes. Rather, he takes all the responsibility on his own self and behaves in such a way that all disputes are resolved, all controversies are resolved. He does not escalate matters. He does not behave in a way that sets up a chain reaction wherein he behaves in a certain way, another person retaliates, and then he seeks revenge, and then the other person also continues this process of revenge. So a believer cuts off the whole process which leads to a chain reaction. He nips all such controversies in the bud. He does not allow them to worsen and exacerbate, because he will suffer. He will be enmeshed in a dispute which will prevent him from focusing on higher things. So for the peace of his mind and for the fulfillment of a higher purpose, he leads life very responsibly and very carefully. So this is what I had to say today. And in one word, I can simply end by saying, don't make people your enemies. Don't provoke people. And that will help you in retaining your peace of mind and leading life in a purposeful way in society.